You are listening to The Standard Show, the podcast that brings you the stories behind the standards with Matthew Childs and Cindy Paragill.
Hello, my name is Matthew Childs and this is Consumer Protection, a series from The Standard Show, the podcast that brings you the stories behind the standards. Standards benefit consumers by tackling important issues such as safety, inclusion, customer service, sustainability, and digital privacy and security. They are a valuable tool in the consumer protection toolkit, working alongside regulation, policy, and enforcement. However, it is vital that consumers are involved in standards development to make sure they address real problems faced by real people. This is where CPIN comes in, an independent organisation of consumer experts, supported by BSI and the UK government. For more than 70 years, it has championed consumer protection through standards. CPIN reps are trained volunteers who represent consumers in standards development to ensure that standards address those real problems, giving a voice to consumers of all ages, abilities, genders, and cultures. Each episode of the series explores a specific standard, which is responding to a real-world issue and the benefits it brings to consumers. How PAS 7055 for button and coin battery safety is protecting consumers, especially children, from serious harm. How ISO 22458 for consumer vulnerability is being used to promote fairer and more inclusive services. And how ISO 21800 will tackle improving consumer understanding of online terms and conditions. 3 brilliant examples of consumer protection through standards, and the importance of the consumer voice in standards making. The publication of the series coincides with BSI proudly hosting the 45th meeting of ISO COPOLCO, ISO's Consumer Policy Committee, in London. With members from 123 countries, ISO COPOLCO advises on standards development from a consumer perspective and promotes global consumer involvement in standardisation. Many key standards developed through ISO COPOLCO, including ISO 22458 and ISO 21800, originated from UK proposals via CPIN, reinforcing the UK's leadership in shaping international consumer protection. This episode of the series features Katrina Phillips, Chief Executive of the Child Accident Prevention Trust, talking about PAS 7055 for button and coin batteries. Because of 2 fatal incidents, the UK's Healthcare Safety Investigation Branch wrote a report on undetected button and coin cell battery ingestion in children. One of the report's key recommendations was that a standard is produced to set out consistent safety requirements to apply throughout the life cycle of such batteries. PAS 7055 is the result. First published in 2021, PAS 7055 provides safety requirements for button and coin batteries and the products using them. It defines what manufacturers and producers are required to do with packaging, instructions, labelling, marketing, and disposal.
This is Cindy Paragill here with a reminder that you can rate, review, and subscribe to The Standard Show wherever you get your podcasts. And you can get in touch and find and follow us on social media too. All the details are in the show notes.
Katrina Phillips is Chief Executive of the Child Accident Prevention Trust and has been with the organisation for more than 20 years. The Child Accident Prevention Trust, or CAPT, is a UK charity working since 1981 to prevent serious injuries and deaths among children caused by everyday accidents. It provides practical safety advice, runs awareness campaigns like Child Safety Week, and supports families, especially those in disadvantaged communities. CAPT also collaborates with professionals and policymakers to create safer environments and influence child safety legislation and standards. Katrina and CAPT played an influential role in developing PAS 7055 through its steering group. I spoke to Katrina about how manufacturers and retailers changed their designs, packaging and marketing to comply with PAS 7055 since its introduction, how industry collaboration has contributed to its success, and what changes will be included in the revised and updated version of the standard to strengthen consumer protection even further. Since we spoke, this new version has now been published. But I started by asking Katrina what improvements in child safety have been observed since PAS 7055 was introduced in 2021.
If a small child swallows a button battery, and particularly a larger, more powerful lithium coin cell battery, and it gets stuck in their food pipe, they could be dead in as little as 2 hours, or they could suffer life-changing injuries. And that's because the energy in the battery reacts with fluids in the body, creates the equivalent of drain cleaner. That burns through tissue. If it hits the main artery, the child can basically hemorrhage to death. And the PAS was commissioned because a child had died after swallowing a coin cell battery. And I think its publication has made a real world difference. So fewer young children have died or suffered serious harm, and their families haven't gone through all of the anguish that's involved in that. I think it's had a huge impact. So I think it's really helped us as a charity in terms of our communications, both with parents and also with industry. We've been able to tell parents that batteries and the products that are powered by them should be safer. We've been able to point to what you should look for when you're buying, and also the conversations that we've had with the manufacturers and with the retailers. I think it's really given a boost to our work on consumer safety. It's really helped us develop and strengthen partnerships in this area.
Katrina, have we got any examples of where the standard has effectively prevented incidents involving button or coin batteries?
I mean, it's quite tricky because with all prevention measures, it's hard to point to specific incidents that have been prevented, because I think what we hear about other cases where there wasn't good packaging or product design and the button battery was easy for a small child to access. But what really strikes me is increasing numbers of toys and products in our home they're powered by button and coin cell batteries. If you look around your own home, you see, digital scales, key finders, small remotes, tea lights, gaming headsets. They're everywhere. They're little miniature powerhouses, and I think manufacturers are finding more and more uses for them. So what we should be seeing in the mortality data is increasing numbers of deaths. And we haven't seen that. And I actually think that's quite incredible, given we know how many more products are now using button batteries and the extent to which those products are found in every home in the country. Now, hospital admissions data is really poor. Children ingesting button batteries, there's no code for that. It's really hard to track. But I do think that safer packaging and those safer products have meant that incidents have been prevented.
Let's talk about that, Katrina, because you mentioned earlier manufacturers and you just mentioned their packaging. How have manufacturers and retailers sort of adapted their design and packaging and maybe their marketing practices to meet the requirements of PAS 7055?
I mean, that's really interesting, because we've I mean, we've seen lots of improvements. So we've got manufacturers who are making their packaging far more secure. I actually went out, bought some batteries, and I couldn't open the pack without a pair of scissors. I, I was mumbling under my breath, and then I thought, no, this is the PAS. And then there are visible warnings on the packaging and on the batteries themselves. And then some manufacturers have been inspired to go above and beyond what the PAS recommends. They've introduced additional safety measures like a bit of coating on the button battery so a child will spit it out rather than swallowing it. And there's no longer that sort of, I suppose, that hesitancy about speaking about the risks. So you actually see some button battery manufacturers actively promoting button battery safety as part of their marketing, which you wouldn't have seen before, but they're owning that. They're feeling proud of what they're doing. And I think that's also helping to raise consumers' awareness of the risks.
So in terms of manufacturers or retailers, do you have any examples you can share there, Katrina?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at, say, two of the big household names, Duracell and Energizer, their packaging for their button batteries is now really secure. So each battery is encased in a double blister pack. The batteries themselves have got a symbol indicating, the warning symbol that was agreed in the PAS. The packaging itself also makes clear what the risks to a small child are if they swallow a button battery. And both of them have also gone above and beyond. So they have both coated their button batteries in a bitter substance that means if a small child swallows it, they'll likely spit it out. It won't go down because it tastes, it's an aversive, bitter taste. One of them has actually coated their batteries with a blue dye so that you can tell, because one of the problems with button battery ingestion is it happens so quickly. Parents don't realise, very small children can't explain what's happened to them, and the symptoms at the start can be really vague. So this is actually something that indicates that there's a problem. So I just think it's brilliant the way that it has provoked that product innovation, which I don't think would have happened without the PAS, because there's been that understanding of the problem and that ownership of it by both the manufacturers and also the retailers, which I think is then helpful in terms of creating that market for safer products.
I want to ask you about that sort of collaboration between the stakeholders that may have supported the standard success. But like you, I also had my experience with a packet of button batteries. I had to. I'm a big cyclist, and I use obviously lights on my bike, and I had to stop off at a brand, very well known stationery brand, WH Smith, for anyone knows that, WH Smith, and had to buy some coin batteries, and I couldn't get into the pack. Had to ask the person behind the desk if I could borrow a pair of scissors to actually get into the packet. Yeah. So it's been a good response from this particular consumer for these products. But I just wonder generally, what's been the response from consumers and stakeholders, and maybe that I mentioned about the collaboration. How has the collaboration maybe supported the standard's success?
I mean, I I really think that collaboration has been at the heart of the standard success, because the steering group that has supported the development of the PAS has got members from right across the spectrum. You've got manufacturers, you've got retailers, testing houses, consumer representatives, charities. This is it could be quite a sensitive topic. Who wants to be told their product could, potentially kill a small child? But there has been that real willingness to listen, to consider options. So the British and Irish Portable Battery Association, they've then promoted the adoption of the PAS to their members, and likewise the British Retail Consortium. And I was invited to speak about button batteries at a British Retail Consortium event. I could point to BRC's involvement in the development of the PAS, their support for its recommendations. And I think, that means retailers have been encouraged to look at their supply chains to ensure compliance with the PAS. So, you get more secured button battery compartments, spare batteries that are in child-resistant packaging rather than loose in the box, and warnings about button batteries on the product packaging. So I think there's just been that sense of the recommendations of the PAS. These are things that we've all contributed to. We've listened, we've understood the risks, we've understood the consumer perspective, we've understood clinicians' concerns, and there is actually stuff that we can do, and the recommendations are sensible and doable. And I think if you didn't have that involvement, but also that collaboration, so that, the manufacturers know the retailers get it, they may be able to point to their compliance with the PAS so that the reputable retailers are stocking their brands rather than, the cheaper non-compliant packets of button batteries where, you can tear at the corner of the pack and they all fall on your kitchen floor. So, yeah, I think that working together has been so important, and it's been helpful to us as a charity, because following the launch of the PAS, Office of Product Safety and Standards invited me to chair a working group on button battery safety. And because we already had that existing collaboration around the table to develop the PAS, people have come from that group onto the working group, and we've been able to continue to look at, okay, where are there still problems? What do we still need to do?
Standards affect all of us every day, wherever we go, whatever we do. By defining good practice, they help people and organizations to do things better. Each year, standards bodies publish thousands of standards, and we are looking for more people like you to join our community of standards makers. We welcome applicants from all fields, backgrounds, and career stages. Our goal is a simple one: to have a balance of views around the table. By becoming a standards maker, you could help to improve the way things are made and done, like creating healthier and more inclusive workplaces, making advances in AI governance, improving product safety or online shopping experiences, or supporting vulnerable consumers. and many, many others. So if you want to make a difference and shape the world through standards, start your standards making journey now. Details of how to do so are in the show notes.
You'd mentioned there some of the standard success, and it's one of those relatively, well, not rare things, but it is an area where we can say, here's a standard and point to where it's making a difference because there's new packaging on a shelf in a shop. So you can actually see it. And you've talked about the successful adoption and implementation, and the standards out there being used and making a difference. I just wonder, since 2021, we're 4 years in now, I just wonder, have there been any challenges? Any challenges arisen at all during its use?
I mean, I think, so I'd probably point to two things, one of which is being taken up in the revision of the PAS. So I think one of the set of recommendations in the PAS that wasn't really followed through was the whole consumer education and awareness raising. So, there are real opportunities for retailers, both in-store and online, to help consumers understand the risks and the practical things they can do to keep children safe. But we didn't really see very much of that. I could walk around my local supermarket, I could pick up something and I could think, that packaging is safer. Yeah, that looks like it has a secure battery compartment, but I wasn't seeing that broader consumer awareness raising. And what we did through the working group that I've been chairing is, with input from retailers and others, we have developed 5 simple top tips on button battery safety that have been adopted within the revised PAS that's going to be launched very shortly. And some of the online retailers have already started using those 5 top tips. And so Amazon is proactively, post-purchase, emailing people who've bought button batteries with the 5 top tips, which I just think it's fabulous in terms of getting the message out to people. And what we're looking to do is encourage other retailers to think creatively about how they can use the channels that are open to them to get those messages out. Because it is then about, as a consumer, how you store batteries in the home, what you do with your flat batteries, because actually they aren't flat. Just because they can't power your power hungry device doesn't mean they don't still have charge left. So that's something that we're really looking to build on and do more on with the next iteration of the PAS. So hopefully you'll invite me back in a few years' time and I'll be able to say, oh yeah, I went online to buy some batteries and there were the 5 top tips. And I went into my local supermarket and I could see them there. So I think there's more. There's always more to do. And I suppose the other area that I point to is, but this isn't something that the PAS itself can solve, is and despite the efforts of some of the online marketplaces to educate their sellers, we are still seeing some overseas sellers using those platforms to sell batteries and to sell products that aren't compliant with the recommendations of the PAS. But obviously that's something that the Office of Product Safety and Standards is aware of, and hopefully that's something that the Product Regulation and Metrology Bill will be able to, encourage, every channel that sells things to us to have the same duty of care. So wherever we shop, whether it's online or in our high streets, we know that what we're buying is safe for us and our families.
Katrina, you mentioned there about the standard being revised and the new version is going to be published very, very soon. I just wonder, you mentioned the top 5 tips. Are there any other updates being considered to strengthen PAS 7055?
I mean, I would say, I think the other revisions to the PAS, they're fine-tuning, and maybe that's because we did such a brilliant job first time round. So I think in the round, the version that is about to be published, that is imminent, is stronger. I think it's stronger across all of the different areas now, in terms of the batteries, in terms of the products, in terms of the consumer education, in terms of the recommendations about sustainability and recycling. As a whole, it all stands together. It's a really strong document that has backing across the piece.
Our thanks to Katrina Phillips for talking to us about PAS 7055. Now, to learn more about the standard, about how to get involved in standards, including through CPIN, and to explore other episodes in this series, then check out the links in the show notes. And a reminder that the show notes are also where you can find details of our socials and all the other ways to get in touch with us here on The Standard Show.
You have been listening to an episode of The Standard Show, the podcast that brings you the stories behind the standards, with Matthew Childs and Cindy Parakill.
You just heard a Stripped Media production.